Hey there, sports fans, and welcome to the first 2018 edition of Turnin 2, the official podcast of the MABL NYC. I'm your host, Mike Smith. I know it hasn't been the easiest transition between winter and spring. We've had some April snowstorms, some bad weather, but it looks like things are starting to clear up, and hopefully we'll be out on the field this weekend. For better or worse, we've already gotten 2 weeks of games in. There's a few teams that opened up on opening weekend and a few more teams that played last weekend on Easter. But that said, it seems like we really haven't gotten a great idea of what the league is shaping up to look like this year. So this is going to be kind of an untraditional podcast. I'm not going to have a guest on this week. I'm still working out some technical difficulties with my computer and microphone and all that. But I do want to be able to take the chance to go around the league, look at some of the top stories, newcomers, stuff like that, anything that will kind of be of interest in the upcoming campaign. As always, I encourage people that are listening to this to leave their comments underneath, either on YouTube or on Facebook. Give me an idea of what you want to hear me talk about, who you want to hear me talk to, just the issues you want me to address this season, and I'll do my best to get to them. Now, before we start, I also want to take time to mention a fundraiser that the league will be doing this year. We're going to be giving to the St. Jude Children's Fund, which raises money to fund research into pediatric cancer. And so what we have in mind is we're going to be doing baseball cards for players in the league. There's a, on the top right of the MABLNYC.com website, we've got a sign-up sheet. And I have to say, the sign-up has been pretty good so far, but I do want to encourage people to continue to do that. You get your face on a real baseball card. It's printed out, good stock paper, stats on the back, a little bio, height, weight. It's just kind of a fun thing we're doing to raise money, and I invite you guys to check it out. That said, with a lot of the games being on Sundays, pretty much all of them this year, it's going to be a little bit tougher for me to get to your games, to take pictures that'll go on the cards. But that's something we're going to figure out kind of as the season progresses and, we see what we're dealing with. But it's for a good cause, and, we all like to pretend like we're real Major League Baseball players every weekend, and this is another way to do that. I think it's a pretty good idea, and I hope that you guys do as well. Now, looking at the action on the field, I think of all the things that we can talk about this week, the first thing is we've got to start with the 2017 MABL NYC champions, the New York Rough Riders. Now, if you guys were in the league last year, you know that the Juan Ramos-led Rough Riders swept my own team, the New York City Mud Hens, 2-0 in the finals, which is still kind of a sore spot for me. But, I'm going to do my best to power through that and, talk a little bit about what's going on with them. Now, beyond any free agent acquisitions or any new pickups, the one thing that the Riders have this year in spades is definitely swag. If you follow them on Instagram, or if you follow the league on Instagram, I'm sure you've seen the pictures. But last year, the Riders, with the check that they got for winning the league, they went out and they bought rings, championship rings, and jackets, with the MABL logo and the Rough Riders logo on there. And I think that's a great thing. People talk about, if you win that money, if you win that pot, what are you going to do with the cash? A lot of guys, a lot of teams think, we'll disperse it evenly amongst the players. Some guys think, hey, it's better to put a little bit towards league fees next year. I'm sure that if you ask my team, if we put it to a vote, the Mud Hens would probably spend the majority of the prize money on Bud Light and shots. But I definitely think that this is a cool thing that the Riders did, and I think it should serve as an inspiration for teams who win the prize money this year, hopefully us, to spend that money in a unique way. So kudos to them for that. But one of the bigger stories in the offseason and the first few weeks of the regular season isn't about what the Riders got. It's about what the Riders lost. So if you've been paying attention to the league transactions or anything like that, if you've seen any chatter online, right before the start of the season, the Riders traded one of their longtime players, Mike Rocky Marmolejos, to the Bronx Cardinals, a new team playing their first year in the league. And talking to both Juan Sr. and Juan Miguel, This was a pretty amicable split, but it's a big move nonetheless. I mean, there have been guys that I have tried to get rid of mid-season in the past. Guys who weren't fitting in or, weren't pulling their weight. And you figure, yeah, I'll cut ties with that guy. But Rocky is a guy who has been a huge part of the Rough Riders organization for the last 11 or so years. I mean, think about all the big hits he's gotten. 2016, the Riders are playing the Bears. They're down late in the 9-inning play-in game, and Rocky comes up with this enormous game-tying ground rule double. I could be wrong, too, but I think he also had a walk-off home run at Preller last year against possibly the Tigers. I could be completely wrong on that one. And then again, in the championship game, we had an early lead on the Riders in Game 1. And Rocky comes up and just rockets a line drive over our first baseman's head. Our guy was able to knock it down. There was 2 outs. The inning continues. What happens the very next batter? Cecil Niles hits a 3-run home run to left field, ties the game up. Riders go on to win. So clearly, Marmolejos is going to be a big loss for the team. From what I've heard, the issue started because Marmolejos was tired of DHing, wanted to try his hand at playing the field. I know he used to play a little center field for the Riders. I mean, he's a capable fielder, but felt that he wasn't being used to the best of his capacity as a DH, EH on that Riders squad. So now he's going to a new team, a team that could definitely benefit from the presence of a guy like Marmolejos, because aside from being a long-time men's baseball player, he's been around the block, but he's also one of the hardest-nosed players that we have in this league. And in talking to both Juan and Juan Miguel, they wish him the best. They said it's good for him. I hope he has a great season and helps that team out. Because really, in the end, what is this league about? It's about getting the chance to go out for 6-7 hours, maybe if you get a long game, a couple hours a weekend, and just play ball. And I think this is something that is definitely going to benefit the Cardinals, without a doubt. In terms of what it means for the Riders, that's a little bit tougher to say. He was a big bat in the middle of the lineup, but they have picked up some other players who may be able to cushion the blow there. Guys like Pedro Acosta, who they picked up from the Tigers, the Brooklyn Queens Tigers, or Jason Lopez, who is one of the most frustrating guys to face as a pitcher in the league. So they're not going to be lacking for talent, but you wonder what that departure is going to mean for them this year. But again, like I said, Juan Ramos and Juan Miguel both said, they wish nothing but the best for Rocky, and I'm sure he's going to have a heck of a season with that Cardinal squad. But now that we've talked about the Riders, look at the rest of the Bronx-Manhattan division. There's a lot of good teams in play right now. First off, you've got the Blue Jays, who are currently 3-1, and right now I think they've maybe made bigger steps forward than any other squad that was in the league last year. They played the Riders really tough this past weekend. 2 games, both decided on walk-offs. The Riders and the Jays split. And I think that speaks volumes to the strides that they've made in making themselves a more complete team. They brought over some of the guys from the Nationals team from last year that was in the Bronx, Brooklyn Queens, rather. But they've also really bolstered that pitching staff. I got the chance to see the Blue Jays play quite a bit last year. And, the talent was always there, but it was that consistency that they were going to get on the mound that was probably the reason they didn't do better than they could have. But this year, you brought in that lefty Joe Kakis, who sure, yeah, he struggled a little bit against a pretty good Riders lineup. But he's a guy that I think when he gets his feet under him, his sea legs under him, I think he's going to be a pretty quality starter in this league. In that game, too, they throw Anthony Ramos the last 3 innings, and he strikes out 6 guys, 2 an inning. He's a guy I think is going to make a difference. And even if he's not a Cy Young candidate, which he may very well be, I don't know yet. But just having that depth, I think that's going to make a huge difference for the Blue Jays. I would definitely watch out for them. And beyond that, you got the New York Patriots. Snoop was one of the older guys in the league last year. Still an MVP, still a great player. His son Derek, I think, is taking strides. I don't know how old Derek was when he started pitching in the league, but he's been playing against grown men for a while now, and it was pretty clear against the Bats that he is now a grown man as well. He's a young, strong kid. He's gonna give you length every time he goes out there, and with Cheyenne Burgess on the back end, that's a formidable squad right there. And you get the Bats who have gotten off to a 1-3 start, which is, obviously not what you want as a coach. But when I was there on the opening weekend, when the Bats were playing the Pats, their manager, Mike Jacobs, said to me, he said, "I don't care how we do today. I don't care if we win or if we lose. I just want my guys to get their work in." And that's really the thing for the Bats because, they've got a lot of talented players. The attendance isn't always there, and especially early in the season when their pitchers aren't warmed up and they've got a lot of great pitchers, it can be tough sledding for them. But I know they got this kid, Marco Barada, coming in. He's going to be a game changer offensively. He's going to be a heck of a MABL player. He's going to be a difference maker. They got Brett Lyle, Tyler Durr, Nick Tripp, who is one of the most reliable starters in the league. That's a team that's going to be very tough to contend with in a 3-game playoff series. So I really wouldn't read too much into a slow start for them because they're going to be there at the end of the year. And to kind of switch gears and talk about the Brooklyn Queens division for a minute, you look at the tough start that the Bats had, but I don't think that there's any team in the league that's had a tougher schedule to start the season than the Tigers. I don't want to toot my own team's horn, but we're a pretty solid squad. And the Tigers opened with us last weekend. They were our first game as well. And we were able to come out on top in 2 really hard-fought, close contests, which, is pretty much what we expect anytime we play that team. But they look ahead to this week, and they've got the San Pedro Mariners, who, for my money, are the most talented team in the league. They've got some of the best position players in either division, in Luis Sanchez, Edwin Valdez. Both guys are absolute studs. And they also have just a host of hard-throwing pitchers, which, especially early in the season, if those guys are warmed up, nobody wants to face that. Nobody wants to face mid-80s, on a 45-degree day. But the plus side for the Tigers, who are one of the best all-around teams that I think you'll find in the league, just in terms of their ability to play defense, their ability to hit. They've got probably the best pitcher in the Brooklyn Queens division in Greg Polius. They've got the reigning MVP in Corey Harper. They lose a couple games early. Big deal. They're going to be there at the end, just like the Bats. But for my money, that's the game to watch this weekend. Tigers, Mariners. They're playing at Old Boys on Sunday at 1:30, I think. It's going to be a heck of a contest. I mean, the Tigers can pitch. They like I said, Polius, Harper. They've got a bunch of other guys who can come in, throw strikes, get guys out. But the Mariners, when they are clicking, are an explosive offense. I think they scored 26 runs off the Bears last weekend, including 9 runs in the top of the 7th inning to win a game 14-12. So it's going to come down to whether or not they're able to limit the Tigers batters. And, Les Guzman is a hell of a hitter, as my team found out last weekend. But it's one of those, cat and mouse type games where both teams bring something different to the table, and you're going to figure out which one wins. That said, and my guys would hate to hear me say it, I wouldn't be surprised if those were the two teams playing for a divisional title at the end of the year. But all in all, it's a tough road. I mean, look at some of the other teams in the division. You got the Indians. The Indians totally upgraded their pitching staff. That was a problem for them last year, was the pitching depth. But they've definitely addressed that problem now, and especially when you look at a guy like who is it? Jason Lantigua, who looks like he could be the frontline ace that they need, to be one of those teams in the conversation for a divisional title this year. He had a tremendous performance against the Giants last week. And as the weather heats up, I mean, I don't know what to expect from the guy because I've never seen him. And beyond that, you've got a newcomer Diamondbacks team with a kid in Johnny Garcia, who's another guy who every time he steps on the mound, not so dissimilar from Orion Smith, every time he steps on the mound, his team has a chance to win. I mean, sure, yeah. So he walked 10 guys last week against the Bats. It's not a huge deal when you look at his final stats and the fact that he got the win. I mean, he struck out 9, walked 10, gave up 1 run. What that shows you is he's a guy who has the ability to make the big pitch when it counts, get outs, and win ball games. Like I said earlier in the podcast, there's a lot that we're going to learn about this season in the coming weeks. But right now, the door is open for anybody to take their shot at the throne. Is it going to be the New York Tigers with their stud lefty? Is it going to be the former champion New York Bears, hoping to get past that first-round play-in game? Is it going to be a first-year team like the Cardinals or the Diamondbacks who are going to bring the trophy home? Well, it's still early in the season, so anything is possible. So good luck out there this weekend, and keep on tuning into the podcast. This has been Turnin 2 with Mike Smith.